Let me start today's episode with a scenario. You're doing good work. You've negotiated a raise. You feel reasonably valued. And then, completely out of nowhere, you find out that a colleague doing essentially the same job as you is making significantly more money. For a lot of people, that number is $15,000 a year, sometimes more. And I want to talk to you about what that moment actually does to your confidence, to your relationship with your work, to your sense of your own value. Because the money is the issue, yeah, but it's not the only issue. And if you don't deal with both, you'll either stay stuck or you'll negotiate from a place of emotion instead of strategy. Today we're covering all of it. The gut punch, the shame spiral, the real math of what a pay gap costs you, and the exact moves to take your power back. Welcome to Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. This is Wisdom from the Porch. Here's what's interesting about discovering a pay gap. The first emotion people expect to feel is anger. And anger does come, but for most people, it's not the first thing. The first thing is usually confusion. How is this possible? We have the same role, similar experience, comparable reviews. I negotiated. I advocated for myself. I thought I was doing the right thing. Was I wrong about my own value? That confusion turns into self-doubt fast, especially for neurodivergent adults who already carry a background hum of imposter syndrome. The pay gap becomes confirmation of a fear that was already there. That maybe you're not quite as capable as you thought. Maybe you've been overestimating yourself. Maybe this is what you actually deserve. That thought pattern is a lie. I need to say that clearly before we go any further. The shame response to discovering you're underpaid is one of the most effective ways the system protects itself. Because when you're busy questioning your own worth, you're not asking questions of the organization. Then comes the anger. At the company, at the system, and often a little bit at yourself for not knowing sooner, for maybe not pushing harder, for being trusting when trust wasn't warranted. That anger is valid. Let it exist. But we're not going to let it run the next conversation. Because here's the thing about discovering a pay disparity. It's both a personal injury and a systemic one. It's personal because it's your paycheck, your career, your life. It's systemic because it almost never happens in isolation. This is a pattern that affects a lot of people, often along lines of gender, race, and neurodivergence. Knowing that doesn't make your situation less real, but it does mean you're not imagining it, and you're not alone in it. Let's talk numbers, because most people underestimate what a pay gap actually costs them over time. A $15,000 annual gap isn't just $15,000. Run that over 10 years and you're looking at $150,000 in base salary. Before you factor in that raises and bonuses are typically calculated as a percentage of your current salary. So the gap compounds. Every raise your colleague gets is larger than yours in dollar terms, even if the percentage is the same. The gap widens over time on autopilot. What does $150,000 represent? That's a down payment. That's retirement contributions. That's the ability to take a career risk without financial catastrophe. That's the freedom to say no to something that isn't right for you. I want you to feel the full weight of that number. Not to deepen the shame, but to dissolve the hesitation you might feel about advocating for yourself. The discomfort of one difficult conversation is not proportional to the financial reality of staying silent. It never was. For neurodivergent adults specifically, people who often already have a complicated relationship with money, who may have lost income to burnout or job changes, who may already be behind on savings. This isn't abstract. This is a gap that hits people who are already navigating an uneven playing field. Know the real number. Let it give you clarity instead of shame. All right, here's your action framework. 3 moves in order. Don't skip ahead. Move 1. Research before you say a word. Before you have any conversation, internal or external, you need data. Not your gut feeling, not the one salary you overheard. Actual market data. 3 sources I trust: Glassdoor for job-specific salary ranges with location filters, LinkedIn salary for your exact role and industry, and direct conversations, anonymous, trusted, with peers doing similar work. Industry associations sometimes publish salary surveys. Use them. What you're building is a salary range for your role in your industry and your geography at your experience level. When you walk into a conversation, you're not saying, "I found out my colleague makes more." You're saying, "The market rate for this role is X to Y, and I'd like to understand where my compensation sits in that range." That reframe matters enormously. You're not reporting a grievance. You're presenting a business case. Those 2 things land completely different, especially for ADHD adults who worry about being dismissed as emotional or difficult. Move 2. Have the internal conversation framed correctly. If the research supports what you already know, that you're being underpaid, you request a conversation with your manager, and you come in prepared. Here's the frame. You're not angry. You're not accusing anyone of anything. You're professional. You're a professional who's done their research and wants to understand how your compensation reflects your contributions and the current market. That's the opening. Come prepared with 3 to 5 specific contributions. Not a list of duties, contributions. The project you led that produced a measurable result. The problem you solved that nobody else could. The client you retained. The process you improved. Concrete, specific, tied to organizational value. Then present the market data. Then ask directly, "Given my contributions and the current market, I'd like to discuss adjusting my compensation to X." Have the number ready. A specific ask outperforms a general request every time. You don't need to disclose how you learned about the gap. You don't need to name a colleague. Your case stands on its own merits. Keep it there. And here's something I'd say to every neurodivergent adult before a high-stakes conversation. Practice it out loud. Not in your head, out loud. Twice minimum. Your ADHD brain will execute the actual conversation better when the words have already existed in the physical world. This isn't extra. This is preparation that works with how your brain processes high-stress communication. Okay, move 3. Know your walkaway before you go in. Before the conversation, you need to know what you'll do if the answer is no. Not might do, will do. Because your walkaway is your power, but only if it's real. This doesn't mean you have to leave. It means you have to know whether you're willing to. The most effective negotiation position is one where the other party can tell you've already done the math. When you know your next move is ready. When you've updated your resume, had a conversation with a recruiter, confirmed that the market would receive you well. That certainty changes how you sit in the room. Sometimes the answer to an internal conversation is no. Sometimes it's a runaround. Sometimes you get the adjustment. All 3 outcomes are information. The organization that underpays you and refuses to correct it when presented with clear evidence is showing you something about how they value you. That information is worth having. Your value was not created by the number on your paycheck, but your paycheck should reflect your value. Those are both true at the same time. The discomfort of this conversation is real. The fear of being seen as difficult, of disrupting a relationship, of being wrong about what you deserve, those fears are real. I'm not dismissing them, but they're not proportional to the cost of staying silent. And once you do the math on that, the conversation gets a little easier to have. Your one clear next step today. Go to Glassdoor or LinkedIn Salary. Try to do it now, not later. And look up the market rate for your role. Just that. Know the number. The rest follows. If today's episode landed, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't left a Spotify review, it takes 30 seconds and it genuinely helps this show reach more people who need it. And as always, thank you to Cloud Microphones for supporting these conversations. This has been Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. You're always welcome on the porch.